Oh, now, I have to admit, ironing has never been one of my favorite parts of quilt making until Camelot came out with scented fabrics. It's so lemony fresh. That's right, Camelot Fabrics just came out with these awesome scented fabrics. It's incredible. It's kind of like when we were kids and we had those great scratch and sniff stickers. Not easy for me to say, obviously. Now, here's another quick tip. The watermelon, oh, it smells luscious, and my daughter, it's her favorite. So I'm thinking to myself, what do you do when you want to use a lot of big pieces of fabric so you can just iron and enjoy the entire process? Well, you make curtains. So today's tutorial, I'm going to walk you through some basic techniques and easy steps to do these lined, ruffled curtains for you. Are you all ready? So the first thing you really need to do before you start cutting or buying or anything is we need to know how much fabric we're going to use. Now, the standard practice is to take your tape out and basically measure the distance across your window here. Okay, and I'm measuring from the outside of the frame to the outside of the frame. And general rule of thumb is no less than 1.5 times the distance, and usually about 2 times the distance. Twice the distance gives you a nice ruffle and gather when it's closed, and looks terrific when they're pulled back and open like that, right? So this particular window, let's say it was roughly 40 inches wide. So I've got 2 40-inch panels up there for twice the distance. And lengthwise, I'm hardly going to even address because some folks like a small window with a curtain that goes all the way to the floor. Other folks like, just hitting at the bottom of the windowsill. So what I'm going to say is I usually add about 5 inches to whatever height I have. And part of that is to include the ruffle you see up above. So let's say it was 40 inches tall. I would add 45 inches of fabric. I should say 45 inches of fabric. And if it's 30 inches tall, I'm going to use 35 inches of fabric for something that's going to have a couple of inches of ruffle at the top and hit at about the bottom windowsill. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to put the liner in. I'm going to teach you how to do the ruffle at the top, and I'm going to teach you how to hang it first and then measure for the bottom. Let's get started. So with my fabrics, the first thing I've done is I've made both my curtain fabric and my white liner fabric. They are the same size. And what we're going to do is we're going to do our pre-hemming of both sides of the liner and the print. So you can see I've done a double fold and turned it over in a real simple seam allowance. So I've done one side of the print. Let's do the other side. And when I'm doing this, what I simply do is I take and I roll over with my fingers, and then a second time, and I get at maybe, 8 inches or so worth of fabric as I approach my presser foot and my needle and my sewing machine over here. And I'm just going to stitch this down real quick for us. Okay, so now I have both the print and the liner materials hemmed, double folded on both sides. Just remember, rule of thumb is whatever you do to one fabric, you do to the other. Now I'm going to get set up to do the top seam, and those are going to be print sides together or right sides together. So I've got one layer here, and now I've got my right sides of my liner because my hem is on the outside. And I'm going to line those up, and I'm going to sew across the top. And I'm pretty standard used to about a 1/4 inch seam allowance because of my quilting work. This isn't going to have much load on it, so that's just fine. If you want to do 3/8, no problem there as well. Let's run this through here real quick. Okay, so that was super easy. No time necessary at all for that. Now, I might have forgot to point out the major reason we were doing our hems along the sides first. We are going to have an opening. Follow me over to the curtains. That opening is going to be up here in the rod pocket, we're going to call that, or the rod sleeve. So I want a finished edge in there because it's going to take a lot of travel over the years as you open and close your curtains. So that's why we were doing that. I've anchored it at the top, and now we're going to turn it right sides out. The first thing I want to do is press this hem. I'm going to do it open first to make sure it stays nice and crisp. all of our work for the rest of the video is going to be right sides out. Once that's joined like that. Okay, so we've got that motion. Now we're going to flip it. Give it one last little pressing. I know a lot of folks feel like curtains can be daunting for the house. And I'll say this, the design work, once you have that figured out, then it's just construction mode, which is wonderful because we all love to use our irons and our cutters and our sewing machines anyways. So it's just that often it seems like there's a lot to do because we have a lot of windows, but it's a very fun sewing project nonetheless. So our next step, let's lay this out nice for us here, is I'm going to measure down from the top about 2.5 inches. And if I'm using a chalk marker or some sort of a pencil, I can do that. Some folks will just like to use pins. If you're nervous about your marking, it doesn't matter which side we're sewing from. So technically we could mark on the back if you would like as well with like an air erase marker. I'm just gonna go across the front and use a simple chalk. I'm hoping you'll be able to see it okay from home. And I'm just measuring down 2.5 inches from the top there. Let's grab that chalk. There it is. And I just need a faint line. I'm just going to be stitching this. And some folks, if you're doing lots and lots of curtains, will actually just put a piece of tape or a marker on the bed of their machine at 2.5 inches because that's almost more efficient than marking each and every one. Okay, I apologize. You probably can't see that real well at home, but I can, and you'll get the idea. Okay, so now we're going to run that through the machine, and that's going to be the hem that forms the top of the pocket for the rod. Let me get this out of my way here because it's caught under my presser foot. Here, well, I look like a real garment sewer or quilt maker if I wear that around the neck. There, that's even better. Quit stepping on it that way. And here we go. Awesome. So now you have your seam done for the top of your rod pocket. Mathematically, you want to add a little bit of fabric in that rod sleeve so that you don't have a problem sliding the curtain back and forth. Check this out. My curtain rod I've used is one of those easy extendable curtain rods, 3/4 of an inch wide, right? With that, I've done 1.5 inches rod pocket so that it does slide easily back and forth, doesn't get caught up. So to do that, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to do the same style of marking, but now we're marking down from the seam we've already created. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this again. Mark that up nice. Okay, move that over. Little extra marking, a little harder to see than I want you to think there. There we go, perfect. Now we're going to go back to the machine. We're going to sew down that line as well. All right, now you are almost done. Couldn't be easier as I promised. The next step we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to finish the curtains along the edges. So you have two options for this. You're going to need to top stitch the edge here closed and the edge on the other side of the curtain closed because this is that ruffle part above the rod. You're also gonna wanna top stitch closed from below the rod sleeve to the bottom. And I do this now, but I don't sew the bottom closed and I actually leave about 3 inches up from the bottom open because we're gonna hang the curtain to measure next after we get this stitched together. If you get good at this, what a lot of folks will actually do is they won't sew the side seams at all yet. They'll hang it, mark the top, but that's a little bit confusing for me. So I'm gonna show you what I consider the easiest way. So next step we're gonna do is we're gonna top stitch this closed. starting at the top, which makes the ruffle portion of the curtain. And right now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sew right on top of the threads that I used earlier on the print side. And when I come down to the top where that rod pocket's gonna be, I'm gonna backstitch to secure. I'm just gonna simply jump over, and now I'm gonna top stitch all the way down to a couple of inches from the bottom. Okay, so I'm gonna finish all of this sewing except for those last few inches at the bottom. I'm gonna do the other side of the curtain, but I already have it done up here on the window, so let me show you this. Follow me if you will. This curtain I've already finished. You can see it's got the bottom hem that was top stitched closed. But the way I did it first is I hang my curtain up with the raw edges, and you can see that I've left that seam allowance open down there at the bottom, so I can actually tie this in and close it up if I need, or I should say when I need, okay? And then what I can either do, because not all window frames are built the same, and not all windows are exactly square. It's just what happens when we put the trim around windows and things. I used to do construction. So I like to hang the curtain and make sure it visually looks perfect instead of is perfect 90-degree angles. So I'll look at my curtain rod, I'll look at the base of my sill, I'll make sure everything's seated just correctly, and then I'll come in and I'll actually even use like a fine Sharpie marker, and I'll come up, I'll come down about 1 inch, and I'll mark, and then I'll come to the other corner where it hits right where I want it to hit, and I'll come down that same inch, and I'll mark it. So once I have those marked out, then I take the curtain back off the rod, because it's incredibly hard to sew with the curtain on the wall, right? And then I rotary cut it, and I fold those edges up one time. They don't need to be double folded. And I'm gonna press it closed, and then I'm gonna top stitch that down, and then I'm gonna finish top stitching on what is these last little open sections in here, and your entire curtain is done. And the benefit is from the liner is it actually adds warmth, it adds a lot more privacy, and it also helps the curtain hang well, gives it a lot of longevity, lets the light come through nicely, and it's very kind to your neighbors so that they're looking at a pretty curtain instead of the back side of the fabric, because we always want the pretty side or the smell good side on our side of the house, right? So those are some of my super easy curtain making tips and techniques. I want to know if there's something I forgot that you think we all need to know about, so drop that in the comment section below, and we'll see you next time here at Man Sewing.